Canadian investigators were digging Tuesday into the life of the 29-year-old man who opened fire on restaurants and cafes in a popular Toronto neighborhood, seeking to explain what prompted the rampage that killed a 10-year-old girl and a young woman and wounded 13 others. The Ministry of Public Safety said Tuesday that they see no link to terrorism. That was from CBS News. The first account I read of this terrorist act was on the CBC website, and the story we have is one of sympathy for the attacker. Like two different people, friend of Faisal Hussain struggles to understand what sparked Danforth's rampage. Amir Sukara saw the 29-year-old as a brother. Now he's trying to understand what made him pull the trigger. When Amir Sukara learned that a young man he saw as a little brother was behind the deadly mass shooting on Toronto's bustling Danforth Strip, he couldn't bring himself to believe the news. It's like two different people. It doesn't make sense, Sukara told CBC News one day after the rampage that left two people dead, including a 10-year-old girl and an 18-year-old woman, and injured 13 others. 8 years before Faisal Hussain opened fire in the city's vibrant Greektown neighborhood, he disclosed to Sukara that he was suffering from psychosis and depression and was getting professional help. "I feel like an older brother, but I guess I wasn't," Sukara said. "I feel bad right now because I wish I had the ability to identify what triggered this sort of behavior, but I don't. I can't say why he did it or not. I wish he had talked to me about something like this. But do people talk to someone before they do something like that? I don't know." Sukara, who said he felt Hussain trusted him, came to know the 29-year-old through a Toastmasters public speaking course that Sukara ran. "He was shy and reserved. I thought it would be a good idea for him, that it might help him open up and speak. It was through that relationship that he learned that Hussain was struggling, the poor soul, but there were never any signs of trouble. Certainly no indications he was violent. And it was at the same time he ran into the 29-year-old 3 weeks ago at the nearby mall. He had $1 million smile and he was very upbeat and happy whenever I saw him. I didn't identify any triggers. I couldn't see anything wrong." Neighbors of Hussain's family had similar memories of Hussain, who lived with his mother, father, and brother in a high-rise in Toronto's Thorncliffe Park neighborhood. A series of tragedies. Quiet and reserved with strangers, Hussain was always mild-mannered and polite, recalled Khalid Malik, a friend of Hussain's father. Malik would often run into Hussain outside on his way to and from work, most recently at a local Shoppers Drug Market. "When he comes around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I say, 'Faisal, who is cooking? Your mom is at the hospital.' He'd say, 'Oh, I'll make a sandwich.'" That was a typical day for Hussain, said Malik. His parents made daily hospital visits to see his brother, who had been in a coma for nearly a year and a half following an accident. It was the latest in a series of tragedies for the family, who several years ago also lost their daughter in an accident. "They've been through a lot," Sukara said. "Yeah, well, it sounds like they have been through a lot, and I feel bad for them. Having a brother in a coma, lost your daughter in an accident, that's terrible. And now this guy's a nut, because anyone that goes on a shooting spree is insane. Our hearts are in pieces for the victim." According to a statement by the Hussain family Monday, the interventions of professionals were unsuccessful. Medications and therapies were unable to treat him, and while they did their best to get help for Hussain, Sunday night's devastating and destructive end was something they could never foresee. "Our hearts are in pieces for the victims and for our city as we all come to grips with this terrible tragedy," the family said in a statement, citing their son's horrific actions. Where or how Hussain could have obtained a gun remains a mystery to the family and friends, neighbors who spoke with CBC News. For his part, Sukara said he's struggling to reconcile the memory of the smiling, polite, quiet man he mentioned with the image of a gunman clad in black garb shooting coldly through windows where innocent people were enjoying a warm summer evening. "I want to believe it wasn't him." And this is the first reaction we get when an Islamic shooter runs over people, shoots it. He's insane. Yeah, well, of course he's insane. anyone that does stuff like that, they're insane to start out with. But was he insane with a specific religion? Well, let's go back to CBS News and see what they say. At this stage, based on the state of the investigation, which is led by the Toronto Public Service, there is no connection between that individual and national security, Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodell said. But a law enforcement source told CBS News that Faisal Hussain visited Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, known as ISIS, websites and may have expressed support for the terrorist group. They were looking into whether Hussain may have lived at one time in Afghanistan and possibly Pakistan, the source said. There is no indication that Hussain was directed by ISIS to carry out the attack. But of course we do know that Canada is in good hands with their law and order Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Let's see how he's handling the crisis of returning ISIS fighters. And we're going to hear a little bit from Ed Schultz, who's recently passed on.
ISIS fighters from Canada are returning home after the group's near defeat in Syria and Iraq. Now Canada's plan for managing them has received criticism from Canadian lawmakers and people across the country. Alex Mihailovich is following the story in Toronto tonight.
As of now, we know that about 60+ ISIS terrorists have returned to Canada. Another 190 Canadians are someplace in the world, mostly Iraq and Syria, fighting with terrorist organizations, including ISIS. Now, if this was the UK, these people would be losing their citizenship, so they could not return to Canada. But this is not the UK. Here, they have the right to return, which is ludicrous on many counts, and a lot of Canadians agree with that statement. You can believe me.
Now, what isn't funny is that the social justice warrior types run around screaming that the media immediately paints a picture when it's somebody that has a Muslim name or their Islamic background. So the media paints a picture that it's terrorism, Islamic terrorism, when in reality, as we can see with this and just about every other incident, is that they bend over backwards to do the exact opposite. First, it's the mental illness thing. To be honest, they accuse the people on the right of, whenever it's not an Islamic terrorist, of claiming mental illness. But like I said earlier, you have to be mentally ill to do stuff like this, to start shooting or running over people. It's a foregone conclusion. Sane people just don't do that. You don't get up one day, plan for months, load it up with guns, or strap a bomb to you. It's just not a sane thing to do. It may turn out that this guy wasn't involved with ISIS. We'll find out. And I think it's good that in the media accounts of stuff like this, they need to be cautious and not come out the gate swinging and accusing. I think that's a good idea. Keep a level head. But generally, people that run over people, blow up a bomb, start shooting and yell Allahu Akbar are generally doing it for Islam. ISIS will take credit if it is an ISIS incident, but your average person doesn't check out ISIS websites. It's just not a normal thing to do. We'll find out. Stay safe, Toronto. Good night.